Hello, Internet, and welcome to episode number 255 of the Comic Watchers Show. I'm Matt, and Chad is not with us yet, but he is on his way. So, no worries. It's not just going to be me vamping for an hour, I assure you. With us this week, we have artists. Oh, there's Chad now. Hold on just a moment. He's in. Hey, Chad.
Hey.
Hey, buddy.
Hello.
This week we have artist Dev Pramanik, who is currently the artist on Moon Knight, Fist of Khonshu. So, Dev, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. It's really great to be on here.
Absolutely. So, Moon Knight, that's a pretty big gig, man. How are you feeling right now?
That's the thing. I really enjoy it. I was actually on a Wolverine Infinity comic when I found out that I was gonna be the guest artist on Vengeance of Moon Knight. And it was pretty sweet, actually. It was really great. And I really enjoyed working on Vengeance. And yeah, from there on, becoming like one of the main artists on like Fist of Khonshu was a pretty great journey. So I'm pretty excited to be here, honestly.
Very cool stuff. So speaking of journeys, what is your comics journey like? How did you discover comics? How did you break into the industry? All that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's been quite a while, quite a long ride. I grew up in India, in West Bengal, like you can imagine, the comic book scene is, especially Western comic books, Marvel, DC, Image, Boom, whatever you want to call it. It's not very commonplace. Like you can't there's not many comic book stores, first of all, and second of all, it's not very commonly found. So, and I was growing up, around the 90s. So yeah, it was quite hard to come across comics over there. So basically, my journey included me just getting a hold of a lot of back issues, things that had happened in late 80s, early 90s, right? I'm drawing a blank on all the stuff that I used to watch, but yeah, like my introduction to Michael Turner, Igor Corday, Adam Kubert, so many others, right? Like all those artists were through these like really small print, like imprint comics in India. You probably haven't even heard of it. It's like an imprint that would sell both Marvel and DC.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, my journey basically started there. I was in school and I would like walk home to save on the transport money and buy comics with that. And I would like have like one or two comics that I would get every month or so, and then I would just go over it over and over. And that's basically how I started. And then I got into engineering college in India.
Oh, wow.
And while I was there, I did less engineering, more drawing. So I was like drawing all day long. Yeah, the regular story, not going to classes and stuff, just drawing. I worked in the Indian comic book scene for a while. And then I worked with a few American comic book companies. And from there, I started getting work with Boom Studios. And then I had my first creator-owned work was with Ram V on Paradiso for Image Comics.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful series, by the way.
I love working on that. It comes back again someday. I'd love to work on it. And Ram also said that, if it allows if our schedules align somewhat, then maybe. But yeah, that was my first creator-owned. And from there, I just went on. I did the Dune, House of Atreides books for Boom as well. And I worked with Walt on a Vampire the Masquerade book. And yeah, after that, I think my next big gig was Marvel. I did a Tales from the Crypt. No, Shadows of the Crypt. I keep messing up that title.
No worries. I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. So
it's like an anthology, right?
Yes, correct. Exactly. So there was a story about Deadpool and the Living Mummy in there. So I worked at that. and then I got to work on Spider-Man 2099 issue 1 of the Miguel O'Hara Spider-Man 2099 that launched in last year January, right? So that the first issue was me, and then
That was with Steve Orlando, right?
yep, correct. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So, do you have any personal connection with Moon Knight as a character? Is this like a dream gig for you?
It is in a way. Like I never really got that close to the character as it pertained to the story elements. But the thing is, I always like it was always there as an inspiration, right?
Mhm.
Because the thing about Moon Knight is it's not like an A-list character, right? So because I grew up in India, we never got very niche characters like Moon Knight. Like not that's the thing. You would say niche, but it's very popular. But also in India, you would get mostly comic books about the Justice League or the
Right,
Avengers,
the big name.
all that. So Moon Knight wasn't really that. But when I started to source online comics, I started. I started to see like what Moon Knight was about, and the thing about Moon Knight has consistently always been that it has striking artists, right? The thing about Moon Knight has always been that, uh, yeah, I don't care what's going on, the art is going to pull you in, like, and that's been something that I have always been drawn to, right? Declan's work on Moon Knight was, pretty groundbreaking, and it kind of showed me a whole new way of looking at Moon Knight, the way he designed the characters, right? Declan Shalvey, right? And then there was the Jeff Lemire. Uh, I'm blanking on the artist's name. Smallwood, Greg
Yeah, Greg
Smallwood.
Smallwood.
Greg Smallwood. His art was pretty terrific. Like, changed my mind about how comic book art can be done. Honestly, because again, I think when you look at Smallwood's art, it's so different from what you would traditionally call comic book art. Like penciling, inking, coloring. With his art, everything kind of melts together. Everything forms a unique aesthetic. So that was one of the first. I won't say one of the first times because Bill Sienkiewicz also did that. So, but my point, right? Moon Knight has always had such a stellar cast of artists that it has always been there for me as an inspiration, sort of. And when I got the gig, I was immediately intimidated because I didn't have a strong connection with the character itself per se, but I had a strong connection with the aesthetics of the character. And knowing that this character has always been depicted by very prestige artists. So yeah, that was definitely something that went through my mind when I got the gig.
Yeah, no pressure, right?
No pressure.
Chad?
So when you're working on Moon Knight and work with Jed, how does he give you like a detailed script and kind of, or does he kind of defer to you on on things?
It's a bit of both. Jed usually gives very detailed, like he has a very set idea of what he wants, right? The thing about Jed is it's really great working with him because he knows exactly the artist he's working with, or at least he knows me. I can't say how he works with other artists, but with me it has been he knows my strengths, he knows what I like, where I flourish, and mainly with me it's about freedom, right? And Jed knows that very well. So what Jed will do is usually when he gives me the script, on pages where there's drama beats, he will detail what emotion he's looking for, what a certain character's pose is, like what their body language is. But he will leave the camera shots, the panel layouts to me. He will detail how many panels there are, and he will basically describe the beats to me. And very once in a while, he will tell me, okay, this is a low angle shot. This is a high angle shot. This is from far away, right? But more often than not, he will pretty much leave the shot choice to me. And even sometimes the body language and stuff, he will write it, but he's very open to me going, hey, do you think this would work this way? Do you think this would work a certain way? And we have a bit of back and forth on that. That's like, and he usually is very much like, I trust you as the artist, you go ahead with it. And a place where he gives me a lot of freedom is the action sequences. So like he knows that I am massively into action, like into choreographing action, right? So most of the action sequences that you see, unless he has a very specific beat he wants to pronounce, like if he wants to write a piece of dialogue that goes with like an uppercut, or he writes a piece of dialogue that goes with a certain kind of action, then he describes it. But otherwise, if it's like, okay, here's the page, this is what I'm going to write, it's just violence. He'll just send it to me, and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to do the violence, right? So that's how we operate. He gives his artists like a lot of freedom, and I think it shows in the books he works on.
So in essence, though, that means you have to, and on top of being an artist, you have to be a fight choreographer too, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's like if you look at Fist of Khonshu issue 4, you know the I don't know if you seen the issue, but there's like, yeah, those pages where there's fights. He's fighting the vermin, and there's that whole page. He basically has the idea of what he wants. He wants a drag down fight happening in the bunker, and with that, he had an idea of like, okay, this is a fight where Moon Knight is losing, and he's like, okay, and I want this to be a montage, so you can figure out how it goes. Normally, that's the thing. It's kind of on me, honestly, because I struggle. I've seen how montages work, and I kind of go a little nuts on them. I kind of like to have it be very clear what's happening. If you look at the fight sequence that happened in Vengeance of Moon Knight, issue 9, between Moon Knight and Shroud, for example, there's a fight scene that happens in that, and I like had made the whole choreography when I could very easily have just done like easy fight scenes, and but yeah, I choose to do that. So yeah, I end up taking that on. But like if you look at issue 5, for example, of Fist of Khonshu, most of that fight scene, he very much described exactly what was happening. He
Mhm.
went from he throws this punch, then he hits him with an uppercut, and then he gives him a roundhouse kick, and he kind of choreographed that. It's again based on the beats he wants to achieve. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what do you find is the most, I guess, difficult thing to translate to the page from one of the scripts?
Like, what do I find, or what have I found to be most difficult?
What do you find or have found to
Hmm.
be most? I would maybe I should say challenging.
Challenging. Oh, that's the thing. The Fist of Khonshu issue 4 Vermin fight scene was definitely one of those. Because it's like crowd fight scenes are gonna be the one of the toughest things, especially for me. I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, it's really hard because, like I said, I like to isolate elements of the fight and have them not like have them uh, be cohesive, right? So it's really difficult. It was really difficult for me to get that in that issue because of how many enemies he was fighting at once. So that was definitely one of the most challenging thing I have found. Other than that, always for me, it's hello. Sorry about that.
No worries.
It's my boy Frankie. um, yeah, it's other than that, it's always backgrounds. Backgrounds will always be kind of a thing that gets you as an artist. It's always, for me at least, gonna be the place where I sink in the most time, right? Figures and action and stuff has become second nature to me. It kind of comes easy to me. But when you have to put in backgrounds where you're like trying to ground the characters in a real space, that's always the hard part because it's a very subtle dance. And that's the hardest part to translate, basically.
Well, and you can tell it's hard because of the sheer number of artists out there that don't even bother to draw backgrounds, it seems.
Yeah, like, and that's what I mean by a subtle dance, right? Is that it is a very subtle thing. If you like, we've all, not we've all, I loved growing up the art of Olivier Coipel, right?
Mhm.
Olivier Coipel's work on Siege was pretty defining to me as an artist, and man, like that moment when Sentry rips Ares apart was is seared in my brain still, and but yeah, I went over that a lot, and it would always astonish me how much Olivier Coipel could show without actually doing much. I think Stuart Immonen kind of has the same philosophy, right? Like it's like describing a shape and then making it so that your brain reads buildings instead of like going in with details and stuff, right? And it's pretty amazing, and that's where I want to get, but I'm still in a stage where I like obsess over, you know, details and trying to make things real, right? And yeah, that's what I mean is you're right, like you can remove backgrounds in a lot of panels, but you have to be very careful with that. It's very subtle. You can't just not draw backgrounds or just fill every panel with backgrounds for that matter.
Right.
I found that like there's also like what you said, a lot of artists don't bother, but I've also seen it happen that a lot of artists just pack backgrounds in every panel. And that also takes me out. I'm like, sometimes I just want the panel to breathe, you know, the moment to breathe. There doesn't need to be a background in every panel. That's why I call it, you know, subtle dance. It's like sometimes you add a panel, sometimes you want to ground the characters in where they are. Okay, two characters are talking, they're in a room. What does the room look like? What's the elements of the room? Have that in one panel, don't have the next panel have any backgrounds. Go to the next panel where you pull out and have backgrounds there, put them on the ground, show where they are in relation to each other. That's the thing. You always have to try to get into the mind of the reader. Look at your page from the sense of, am I telling the reader where the characters are? Because if two people are talking in space, it's not interesting, I
Right.
feel.
So how do you, as an artist, like how do you? I guess a lot of this comes down to just years of practice and honing your craft. But
Yeah.
how do you determine which panels need to breathe versus which ones need to have more of the detail?
Usually, I would always, like as a rule of thumb, say that the first panel of the page usually should have a background. Right? It's not always. It doesn't. It's not a rule. It doesn't always work, but usually the first panel of a page should always have a background. That's always my kind of my philosophy. That uh, like the way I learned growing up with art is before the page goes to the colorist and then the letterer and final, like the page in black and white should be able to tell a very cohesive story. It won't tell you the whole story, but you should look at it and be able to grasp what's happening. So with that, and I go a step further where I'm like, every page should tell a cohesive story. You shouldn't get into any page, and yeah, of course, like you need context, but when you go into a page, you should not be lost. You
Mhm.
should not be like, oh my God, what the hell is happening? Where am I? Ideally, you want that page to have a set. And if it's a continued scene that's going on for a while, then yeah, it's kind of up to the artist. But usually, most of the artists that I've worked with, they have always had quick cuts, right? Like a scene takes like 3 pages, and then you go on to the next scene, next scene. So when you have three at most pages for a scene, um, you kind of can work with that. But usually, I like to set uh, the first panel of a page with a background. What I also like to do is change the angle. If the first panel is a straight on angle, straight on shot of the characters in a space, I have the background. I also like to, in somewhere in the page, change the angle of the shot to give them a different view of the room. You know, like because ideally you if you think about it in that way, like because again comics is not like many other mediums, right? In comics you kind of are going through multiple things in a page, and having two different angles on a shot kind of helps you ground the people in where the characters are. So yeah, for me, I like to have at least 2 panels in a page with backgrounds. That's what I try to aim for.
Okay.
So when
Chad?
you're choreographing a fight, do you draw your inspirations from other places,
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Like again,
or
I
do you just
grew
go out randomly beat up somebody and
No, yeah, that's the thing is it kind of depends because it depends on the story. It depends on who I'm depicting, right? Because if you think about the fight scene that happened between Mark and the Shroud in Vengeance, um, the fight was very much just down and dirty brawling match, right? So yeah, I always try to keep in mind the character who I'm portraying. Mark has a background in boxing, so I like to throw in boxing moves with him. His defense looks like he's a boxer. He puts up his hands a lot. He tries to defend. He does not dodge much. He does not. He defends and counters. The Shroud, but if you look at the issues, Shroud uses more uh, wild tactics. He'll like tackle him. He tries to like go all out. Like he doesn't have much of a technique. And yeah, like Mark, like yeah, Moon Knight also like has like some grappling techniques. He grapples him and tries to submit him. So yeah, I try to work with the character I'm working for. Like I wouldn't do the same thing with, if let's say Iron Fist. If I was drawing Iron Fist, I wouldn't make him do boxing moves or grappling moves. I would make him more nimble, like draw him in more energetic, more kinetic poses where he's trying to evade and counter in a different way. So it's always, first thing is always, who are you drawing fighting, right? Everyone can't always be punching. So the fighting tells a story. Um, the thing I did for the Vermin fight that I did, you'll see that Mark, it's just survival. The first part is just survival. He's not really thinking about, oh, I'm gonna be fancy, because he has multiple people, multiple vermin coming at him. So he's like trying to fend them off, getting bit. He's throwing them off, getting jumped again. But when we get into the page where he loses it, and it's like he's going nuts. There's no rhyme or reason. He's throwing those moon daggers. He's hitting them with the club. He's just butchering them. So again, it kind of tells you where he is, right? What place he is in. It's not just about how do I get them to fight. Same with issue 5, with his fight with Fairchild, right? It's a boxing match. He is losing it. He is a bit mad, but he still has his boxing chops. So he comes in to fight, and he's a bit erratic, but he's still using strategies that he usually would. And yeah, that's basically what it is. When I do choreography, I try to always center it around what the character is. And secondly, yeah, I have a lot of inspiration. I'm a boxing enthusiast. I love boxing, and I like MMA as well. I like grapples and holds, and it's like I enjoy watching movement, right? I used to watch kung fu movies and stuff like that growing up, so I had that, and I also read a lot of manga. A major influence on me was James Harren. He's like, I love his work, and I started watching his work from BPRD when he was doing BPRD back in the day. If you look at his work, he really produces some kinetic, like some energetic
Yeah,
pieces.
the Ultra Mega guy.
Yeah, oh yeah, and that's the thing. He's doing Ultra Mega now, but he has been like, I've been following him for a long time. He is basically one of those guys that influenced me in such a way that I realize that you can do visceral action while also making your art look good, and also like ground your characters in a sense, like have them have a sense of weight, like have them feel like they're heavy, like if a punch hits, it's heavy. And yeah, he kind of introduced me to that, and then I studied manga as well. Amazing examples of fighting there. Hajime no Ippo is one of my all-time favorite mangas, and yeah, so those are places I draw inspiration from to create choreographies.
And do you also when you're doing that, do you use like models to kind of help you find that perspective?
Yeah, sometimes I do. Sometimes if I, because that's the thing is, most of the times I don't usually need it, but sometimes some poses are, become like, okay, how is this body moving? And that's the thing. Usually I use them when I realize that I can figure it out. I can like try and figure it out, but even if I figure it out, it probably won't look natural because I'm drawing it from I don't know how this action works in real life, right? Most of the time you can get away with it because as you gain experience, you kind of have a second nature, create a second, like your brain kind of gets into the habit of creating poses and stuff that feel natural. But with fights and stuff like that, with like exaggerated movement, you don't want it to be that exaggerated. Like readers can always tell, right? Exaggeration and unrealistic are two different things, right? If it's unrealistic, the readers can tell. If it's exaggerated, the readers can tell, but they still enjoy it, right? So that's where I use models, like mostly references. I go to Google, I look at the body, and I block it out, and I go, okay, this is how it works. So yeah, that's when I use them mainly.
So,
So go ahead.
go ahead, Chad.
So what kind of taking a step back from that? What's your process? Do you work digitally? Do you work
I
hybrid?
do
Or
I do mainly digital work right now. My process is mainly, that's the thing about my process. My process is a bit wild. It's not, yeah, I don't really honestly have a process per se. Because yeah, I've been getting a bit experimental with my panel layouts. So normally my process is mainly I get the script and I sit down with the page and I try to figure out what the page is trying to reveal, right? What the page is trying to say. Um, it's been wild because mostly I've been getting action scripts or very trippy scripts, right? Like so I've been doing a lot of experimentation with panel layouts. Um, but my process is mainly trying to first figure out what the page is trying to say, right? If it's like, um, yeah, like if I'm trying to convey that like that Moon Knight is going through something really difficult or he is like losing it, right? I try to break the panels in a way that it kind of shows that he is not like, yeah, if you're talking to people in your mind, you're not always going to be like completely like, how the normal panels work, right? So I try to incorporate that. So to do that, I have to then kind of see how the flow of the page works. I have to figure out, where the first panel is, how that leads into the second panel, how that leads into the third, while making it exciting, while keeping it interesting. So that's the first part of the step. And once I have like a very rough situation laid out, I basically start drawing. Right? I use a pencil tool. I work, like I said, I work digitally on Clip Studio. I use a pencil tool and I start drawing the thing. I draw the shapes that I want to have pop. Unlike a lot of artists, like I know, and I've seen a lot of processes around. People usually like block out things beforehand and then draw that, detail that, and then go in and do the blacks, drop the blacks. If you look at my work, I don't have solid blacks very often. My blacks always have some some kind of imperfection in it, and that's because I don't do solid blacks a lot. I will do like solid blacks, as in like if there's shadows, if I'm like, yeah, okay, this is supposed to be a shadow, I'll do a solid black. But most of the shadows that I create on bodies and objects, they are shaded. So it kind of like emulates what I do in traditional as well. I use acrylic washes. So that's what I do in digital as well. I use a brush that kind of creates that same thing. If you dilute the acrylic and kind of wash over, you'll create a gradient, a black, and then it like grades off, right? So that's what I use, which is why I usually can't do that. I can't block it off and then detail it and then drop blacks and then create hatching. I don't do that. So it kind of changes the way I work. I start penciling, I start doing the rough shape of the bodies of the objects, of the backgrounds, whatever I'm doing. And then I just go in with the brush I have and start filling in on the spot and trying to figure out how the lights and shadows interact to add to what I already have. I already have a flow going with the body, with the bodies, the objects, like they move around the page to give you a reading order of how things are working. And then I try to enhance that with shadows and lights, play with the shadows and lights, play with lens flare, play with whatever element I have in my arsenal to make the flow, like make it so that you cannot avoid the next panel and the next panel and the next panel. And then, once that is done, then I go in and do some After Effects here and there and just make it pretty, basically. Yeah.
Do you find it's more challenging to do that digitally than it would be on traditional paper with pencil or pen?
No, digitally actually makes it much easier. Definitely much easier. That's the thing. I would have said that it was making it way easier, but when I was doing some traditional work recently, I discovered that it's just like it's not as difficult. It's just yeah, it's a bit of a getting used to thing. But overall, yeah, I think digital does make it easier to produce professional work in the time frame that we need. So yeah, but I do intend to go back to traditional at some point. It's kind of cool, and but that's the thing. I'm trying to figure out when I can get some time to practice and start getting back into that. But yeah, for now, I do mostly digital. Yeah.
Okay. So, how far ahead are you right now in terms of drawing issues?
Currently, I'm working on. I recently finished issue 8, and I don't think I can say which one I'm on right now unless editorial lets me, because we are switching back and forth. Yeah, but I just recently finished issue 8, so that should give you, like, I think a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, for now I can't tell you which issue I'm working on. But yeah, and issue 8 is really cool. Honestly, like I think it's my best work of my career so far. And yeah, it's nice because it has an Alex Ross variant cover. Kind of, I'm freaking out about that.
Yeah, you should be.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm really proud of it. When I found out, I was like, man, I'm glad that his cover is on this one because I am really proud of this one. But then again, I like every issue I make, I feel like, oh my god, this is my best work. And then I look back
Is
on the
that
previous.
is that going to be the timeless variant?
Yeah, that's going to be the timeless one. It's going to be the Virgin variant.
Well, I mean that's good though that you get that feeling because I mean you should be striving to improve. I mean in
Oh
theory.
yeah, definitely. It's definitely something that I enjoy. Sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. Go on.
No,
Go ahead,
I
Chad.
was saying something. I was
Oh,
saying something to my son.
Yeah. Oh, you're
well,
muted.
oh,
Oh, yeah.
I was talking to my son.
Okay. Oh, okay. But yeah, the thing is, I do like every issue I make, I kind of feel like I'm upping what I'm doing the previous issue. Um, and yeah, I don't know how a lot of different artists feel about their work. Like I don't really haven't really talked to many artists about how they feel about it, but I yeah, I kind of push myself to that. Like every issue, I want to do something different, do something more exciting, while not trying not to go overboard, trying not to like go absolutely bonkers. Like my editors let me get away with a lot, but I don't know how. I'm always trying to push for. Hey, no, 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 no. This is my boy Echo. He loves sitting on the laptop.
oh, hi
Not
Echo.
gonna go very well for us. Really. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
He loves the laptop. Yeah, I don't know. I forgot that he does. Maybe you gotta go down. But that's what I mean is that I try to honestly, like, I have a fight with myself happening over there where I'm trying to outdo myself, do some crazy stuff, but also trying to make sure that I don't go wild, like go completely off the rails. Um, and yeah, every issue I do, I feel like I'm improving upon the last one. And eight is no different. I feel like eight is something that I like. Yeah, I feel really proud of it. And the issue I'm working on now is turning out really good too. And let's see where it goes.
So I know earlier when you were talking about your career, you said that you worked on, Indian comics.
Yeah, yeah.
How do are they different from American comics, or kind of what's what's what is there anything that kind
It's
of makes
changing
the
now. Back when I was there, I was working for the companies that were pretty much like at the forefront of independent creations of in India. And the other thing, back when I was working there, I did work with some great creators, and one of them was Ram V. Right, we came up together. We started with this anthology called Black Mumbai. I think I have it. Yeah, this is the one. Uh, that's the one. That's my first work with Ramvi. And yeah, I still remember uh, like us just plotting this anthology that I was still like a young artist, right? And yeah, Ram wanted me to do all the four stories in the anthology. But being who I was back then, I was just like, I didn't know how to deal with deadlines. So I just did the first and the last story. And yeah, to this day, the last story is one of my favorites that I've worked on. So that's one of the stories of what me and Ram went through working in the Indian scene, because that was self-published, right? Overall, if you look at the published scenery back when I was working there, there was some cool ideas hanging around, but Indian comics I feel are always trying to chase what the superhero landscape has done. The indie scene, yeah, I don't know. I've always, at least back in the day, felt like comics weren't taken seriously. Something like Image or stuff like that wouldn't work very well over there. I've always felt like there's always been a hunger for stories based in or around India, outside India for some reason, right? Like, and if you look at Ram's work, he kind of shows that. He did the Savage Shores, right? He did the Rare Flavors, right? Many Deaths of Lila Starr, all set in India, all set in India, but also universal in tone. But they're all based on his DNA, right? He wants to tell stories close to his heart, and yeah, they kind of blew up out of India. Like in India, I don't even know if, like how many people yeah, I don't know if there's a market for that kind of stuff. But that's the thing. I feel like India very much wants to recapture that wanted to. And I like right now I feel like the scenery is changing. People are probably getting more interested in it. I wouldn't know. I have not been active in the scene for a while. But when I was there, it felt like they were just trying to cash in on the superhero craze, and
Mm.
or like just repurposing stories about our mythologies, which like felt like there were no fresh ideas coming out because there was no appetite for fresh ideas, and that's how it felt working back then. And I've been looking at people creating more comics and more publishing houses in India recently, and I kind of am happy for that. I'm happy that more people are kind of getting into it now.
now is there a do you want to kind of have want to pursue like more creator owned where you're writing and drawing, or is that something that
Yeah,
appeals to you?
definitely. Yeah, that's the thing. I do. I definitely have. I definitely want to. I have been. Yeah, I have been trying to get polish my writing skills so that I can, write my own projects as well. Um, but yeah, I mean that's the thing. When you're an artist, you kind of know like writers usually have like 4 or 5 gigs that they're doing on average, whereas artists are like if they can do one, they're lucky. right? Like, like not everyone can be Dan Mora, right? Not like 2 pages a day. But yeah, people like me, for example, I work and I'm like trying to get one book done well, and with what skill I have, I am struggling to work on that itself. And like there was a time in my life where I was doing 2 books at once, and that was kind of crazy. But I decided never to do that again until I got better at it. And but yeah, because of those limitations and just life getting in the way, I haven't been able to get there where I want to with my writing. But I'm trying to research and come up with pitches for Marvel if possible. I don't know. I definitely want to do something because I really love the idea of black, white, and red as an art style. Right, I love doing that. And I don't know if you've seen. I've created some X-Men redesigns,
Oh,
and
cool.
I also
You,
kind of
you did an alien. You did an alien red, white, and blood,
yeah,
didn't you?
that's where it started. That's exactly where it started. I did that, and I think Sarah Brunstad was my editor, and she was like, "Oh, are you done with the pages? You can send them over, so I can send it to the colorist." And I was like, "Oh, actually, I think I'm just gonna color it." And she was like, "Oh, you're gonna spot color it?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they just let me. I was like, "Okay." My first Marvel coloring gig, I guess. But that was where I kind of got into the spot coloring thing. And yeah, I really enjoy now. Like ever since that, I really enjoyed working on Spider-Man. So I kind of not reimagined, kind of made a lot of illustrations of Spider-Man in pure black, white, and red. And yeah, I kind of really enjoyed the process. It kind of helps you when you have access to just 3 colors, black, white, and red, like any on with me, it's red because I love the color red. But when you have that to compose a piece, it kind of gives you a whole new perspective on how you want to design characters, create compositions, create, a page. It kind of realigns your brain. So yeah, I've been thinking about because again, Spider-Man 2099 is pretty close to my heart. So I was thinking about like researching and creating something like a pitch for Marvel to see if I'm any good at it. So let's see.
Are there any other characters? Because you did some work on for DC on, was it the Vigil?
Mhm.
Yes, yeah, yeah. DC. I think uh, I would be really interested in working on Vigil again when it comes back. Because yeah, I enjoyed working on the characters that were already there, and then I also designed a character called Dynamo for them, and yeah, that was pretty great. Like like there's a character in DC that I just created, and yeah, that was a pretty cool. Um, but definitely, I would definitely work on visual if the opportunity came up again and schedules aligned. So yeah.
Are there any green characters that you would like to take your put your spin
No,
on?
I'm definitely working on one right now. So like Moon Knight is definitely a character because like that's the thing. Some of the like Moon Knight is just such a great character to work on, right? Because as an artist, especially when you're coming up, you kind of don't realize that. Like I especially didn't. I would again, like I said, I didn't have access to many comics, but I always had access to art, and the way that artists would utilize Moon Knight's character design to create stunning compositions is definitely learned. I kind of my learning brain kind of caught on to how to compose, especially if you look at Declan Shalvey's work on
Mhm.
Moonlight, right? Like the way he composes, like there's some panels of his run that are just etched into my brain, right? Like Moonlight coming, like it's a horizontal panel, and Moonlight coming in, like 80% of the panel is his cape, and all the action is happening in the other 20%. And I saw that and I was like, man, that's so cool, right? Like that's first of all looks very simple. It's like all mostly white, but then in the small 20%, there's so much detail, so much action going on. It was just a whole like, and that's why I mean, Moon Knight is a dream character for me because of that. Because such a whole different way of looking at art, right? So yeah, I would say dream, like Moon Knight is definitely a dream character. Spider-Man 2099 would be another one. Like if they ever, let me go nuts with it, I'll go nuts with it. Like I have been dreaming about if I could work on a Spider-Man 2099 story that was black, white, and red.
Ooh.
I'd die a happy man. I'd be like, yeah, this is it. I'm done. Right? I would love to. I don't know. Like it probably will never happen, but yeah, I also really enjoyed doing the X-Men redesigns. They kind of like people seem to really enjoy it. Like relatively, I'm not like it wasn't like viral or anything, but a lot of people seem to enjoy it, and I was enjoying doing them. Like I was doing them when I was because I did an issue of Spirits of Vengeance when I was in November, in September, I think September something. Yeah, that's when I did it, and when I was doing that, I was kind of going through a bit of a dry spell. Like I wasn't feeling as creative, so I would wake up every morning, and before I sat down to work, I would just randomly reimagine a character. Right. I started daily X-Men drawings. Right. Started with a scale study for Wolverine and Cyclops, and people like kind of liked it because I made Wolverine so much shorter than Scott. Right. And people were like, "Oh God, he's that short." I'm like, "Yeah, he's 5'3", dude. What are you? Are you? Of course he's short. I'm not. I'm not one of those artists who makes Wolverine crouch down and make him feel short. I'm not interested. He's short. I'm going to draw him short. So that kind of got it going. But then every day I would add another character in the black, white, and red theme, right? And it kind of helped me, my brain get into that creative space where I was innovating rather than just getting up and going, okay, I got to draw this pretty. I just got to make this page pretty, right? That's in a different place. Getting that creative stuff going is in a different place. So definitely, I would love to see if I could ever do anything with my imaginings of the X-Men. Definitely, Wolverine is also a character I would love to work on, right? Because he's been a character that has been very close to my heart coming up. Just the core of the character. The little guy who just never gives up. Goes up against crazy shit. He would probably fight. Sorry, I said a bad word. I'm sorry about that. Like he would fight Galactus if he could. Like if you were like, yeah, go fight that dude. He's like, yeah, sure, whatever. I have 3 claws. Who cares? I can't die, so I'll slash Galactus. But that's the thing. That energy was always something that I kind of connected to. I was like, yeah, I don't care. I'm in India. I'll try to get into Marvel, I guess. Like I'll do it. And yeah, like flying on a hope and a prayer. Just that's a character that really I feel a connection to. So I would love to work on that. I would say Batman, but like yeah, I feel like everyone wants to work on Batman. Like who doesn't, right? So it's not a dream. Like I just like how the stuff you can do with Batman.
Sure.
Like he's a compositionally very strong character, and yeah, so that's something I would definitely want to do, especially now that there's news of like Marvel DC crossovers. I've been actually alongside my Spider-Man 2099 stuff. I've been kind of working on a script, like not a script, like an idea of a Batman and Wolverine story, kind of that I have been trying to flesh out. But again, because of Moon Knight, and I'm like pouring all my energy into Moon Knight, I haven't been able to get to that. But yeah, that's something I was like, yeah, I have those 2 dream characters, and I'm kind of working on a story to get that out of my head. So yeah, definitely those are the characters I would work on if given the chance.
Very, very cool. What about Image or Dark Horse or Boom? I mean, do you think there's a chance that like maybe you and Ram, or maybe you and whoever, or you and your future script that you're going to work on, and an Eisner for, are going to maybe take the show over to one of the independent boys?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's the thing. Independent is the dream, right? Like you can work for Marvel, but yeah. And I love working for Marvel. Honestly, I love it. But at the end of the day, it's someone else's property, right? I put my heart and soul into Moon Knight every single day, knowing that it's at the end of the day, yeah. Like people will probably credit me. They'll be like, yeah, hey, that design was created by Devmalya Pramanik, or that story. Oh, that run was so cool, right? But at the end of the day, it is someone else's, and I don't let that stop me a lot, because I'm like, that's the thing. I've grown up with these characters, and being able to contribute to that landscape. What a privilege, right? What a life. But when you think about the good life, right? The look at Robert Kirkman, right? Like, when you think about that life, right? You want to go, okay, that's, if you want to have that, right? Like, how they have dreams for people who kind of like, you go into like the entry level jobs, and they have that dream, like, wow, yeah, keep working and you someday be manager, or someday become CEO. I don't know how, but yeah, keep working, right? So like, that CEO manager dream, that rise would be what you want with independence, right? That when you make your independent project, your indie project, there's that chance of it becoming that hit that kind of gives you that life, right? But yeah, like I said, it's a dream. But I definitely want to focus on it. But yeah, I also have to keep in mind that that's always like a one in a million shot that doesn't always pan out. So that's something that I have to balance as well. The subtle dance, right? The subtle balance
Little
that
Dan.
you.
So have you been on the convention scene, and how has it been interacting with, the fans,
Yeah, that's the thing.
and
I
hearing about back about them, about your work?
Yeah, that's the thing. I only recently did I go to the Toronto Fan Expo. That's where I actually met Jed. It was the first time I met Jed, and it was really fun because again, I am currently in Canada and I'm not really a permanent resident. So I don't have a work permit as such. So I can't really make put up business. I can't put up a business in stalls and like sell stuff. So I currently I'm waiting on that to be able to properly go through legal channels to be able to set up stalls at conventions. But yeah, up until now I was in India, and yeah, India. I actually did stall once in India, but India is still coming up in the Comic Con scene. Like, people are, it's kind of starting to pull some crowds, pull some people to come and enjoy the I think Ron Mars went to one recently, and I think Adam Gorham is going to one in the next one. I think Bangalore. Um, but yeah, overall, Indian Comic Con scene was still new. And I have been to a few Indian Comic Cons scenes. I think I went with Ram for I think, which one was it? I can't remember right now. But yeah, I did go to that. But cons in USA and Canada, I've only ever been to Toronto as a visitor, and that was actually a pretty great experience, I would say, because I met Jed, I met Ryan Stegman, I met
Oh,
Steve McNiven, I met Yannick Paquette, I met Nicola Scott. So many people. Man, I met. See, that's the thing. My brain blanks on names sometimes. Um, Nick Bradshaw. Like, that's the thing. I kept losing the name. Nick Bradshaw. What a great guy! Such a nice guy. I was so nervous talking to him because he kind of I think he made a cover for my Miguel O'Hara issue that I did. The cover on that was his work, and I was so excited. I was like, oh my god! And then I was about to go talk to him, and I realized that, wait, maybe he doesn't even know I exist. How I'm just deciding to go talk to him, going, oh, you made the cover for this book that I worked on. He's like, oh, who are you? But he was generally the nicest guy you could ever meet. And man, he made me feel so at ease. Everyone kind of like Jed was so nice. And I was so nervous. This is the first time I'm meeting these people that I work with, right? These
right.
big names at Marvel and DC. And oh man, they just welcomed me. I went up, and they, again, I'm a visitor, so I went up and they saw me. They didn't know who I was, but then I said, "Yeah, I'm working on Moon Knight, Vengeance of Moon Knight right now." And they were like, "Oh my God, that's so great! Come on in!" And they brought me behind, and I sat there with them. I sketched with them. Jed introduced me to people. So like, it's been a really positive first time experience. And once I can get all the legal stuff in order, I would absolutely love to, table more.
That is so great. Yeah, I mean, Comic Chad will be at New York Comic Con again
Yeah,
this year, so maybe you can make it to that.
we'll see. I'd love to make it to that.
Yeah, most definitely. So, looking back on your career and where you are now and where you hope to go, I mean, do you have any? Do you have? Hopefully, you don't have any regrets, but do you have anything that you'd like to look at and say, "Man, I wish I had done that differently"?
Oh, definitely. You're artists. Of course we have those. Yeah, it's like, yeah, regrets. I definitely do regret not going to art school. Like,
Mhm.
I wish I'd gone to art school. Um, that was, I think, one of the things that I struggled with because I went to engineering because my parents wanted me to be an engineer and nothing more really. And again, growing up in India, it almost feels like you don't have many other options unless like you're kind of scared into going into engineering. Like even if you want to go to art school, you're like told, you're not going to make a living going to art school, so whatever. So I didn't, but I definitely once I went through engineering, I didn't really engage with the education system because I was drawing all the time. So when I did leave and when I decided I didn't want to work in the corporate industry and I wanted to work in, um, I wanted to draw. I over the years I ended up feeling like if I had an art education, I ended up feeling that that would have helped me with the discipline of it. It
Mhm.
would have taught me what needs the burdens of it. Like okay, you I know you want to produce the best work of art you can, but you also need to keep time constraints in mind. How can you produce the best work in the shortest time possible? The constraint system. I think that's very much what the an education is supposed to do more than knowledge. It's funny. What's wrong? Sorry about that. Yeah, an education system to me is always more than the knowledge. It's supposed to give you discipline, and I definitely that's one of my regrets is not going to art school and getting that to getting like I would probably have been at this point much earlier if I had been able to do that.
Right.
Um, yeah, regrets like yeah, also like slacking off, and that comes with that. When you don't have discipline, you don't hit your goals, and you kind of end up like feeling like you're not getting to the goals you want to get to. And when you do that, you kind of feel like what's the point of it all? And you kind of it's a vicious cycle. You kind of slow down, but then when you slow down, you realize you have to now catch up. But when you try to catch up, you realize you're farther behind. So you try to catch up again and then fail again and you pull back again. It's like yeah, it's a whole vicious cycle that
Hmm.
definitely happened because I kind of went, oh, it's my passion to draw, so I'll draw. And yeah, definitely one thing I would want to do is see if an education in art would have given me that discipline.
Got you. And yet, here you are now drawing Moon Knight, Fist of Khonshu.
So am I. So I am.
You're living the dream, man.
I am living the dream. It's been really great. Like that's the thing. I can't wait for you guys to check out issue 8.
I'm here for it. Moon Knight every month is at the top of my read pile when it comes out.
Oh hell yeah! That's the thing. I'm sitting on some pretty yeah, like some pretty cool artwork that I'm just doing, and I'm like, man, I wish I could share this stuff, but I can't. Issue
Yeah,
8
we'll get
is
to it.
gonna yeah, I will eventually, but I think issue 8 I feel will yeah, I think it's gonna definitely leave a mark.
Awesome. Well, Dev, thank you very much for your time this evening. We appreciate it.
Thanks so
Uh,
much.
Where can people follow you on social
yeah,
media?
that's important.
Sorry,
Where can
I didn't
people
hear you.
find out?
Oh
Where
yeah,
can
oh yeah.
people?
I'm usually everywhere. I'm at the Warblazer. No spaces, no underscores. Just the Warblazer. TheWarblazer. as it spells. That's pretty much everywhere I am. I made that decision. Like I started when I first made Twitter or something. I don't know which came first. I made that as my handle and I stayed on that. And then later when I started blowing up, I was like, now I have no choice. I have to stick with it. I'm the Warblazer everywhere. I don't know what it means anymore. Who cares? If that's my name.
It sounds cool.
So yeah, that's me. You can find me at the Warblazer everywhere, pretty much. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, even. I have a TikTok. Blue Sky, Kara, and I think Threads as well. I'm pretty much on everything.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate everything that you're doing, and we appreciate you for being here with us this evening.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Dev Pramanik, everybody, the artist of Moon Knight. And you can check us out next week as we talk to who, Chad?
I think we're going to be talking about Captain Planet.
Oh man,
Rose is coming back.
that's
That'll
awesome.
work.
I saw that and I was like, man, this is amazing. I think
Rose
like
is just knocking it out of the park at every turn right now. And he's been on the show several times now, and he's one of those folks that's just a joy to talk to.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Oh, all right. Well, folks, get out there, support local art, support your local comic store, and get out there and just do something good for your neighbor because the world needs a lot of that right now. Thank you kindly for listening, and we will see you next time. We're the Comic Watchers, and this is our show.